And we're coming up on the graveyard here at Old Trail Town. There's several people buried here. The first grave we're coming up on here is Jeremiah Johnson, mountain man, played by Robert Redford in the movie. He lived in the Rocky Mountains. He was a Mexican War veteran. He started out with a .30 caliber Hawken percussion rifle, which he used as his main rifle until he finds the frozen body of mountain man Hatchet Jack, who was clutching a .50 caliber Hawken rifle in his arms frozen. So Jeremiah takes the rifle. He now has a bigger rifle. He comes across a cabin that was attacked by Blackfoot Indians, leaving only a woman and her son. He adopted the son and calls him Caleb. After that, him and Caleb, they run across a mountain man named Dale Goo, who'd been robbed by Blackfeet, and they left him buried up to his neck with feathers stuffed up his nose. Jeremiah saves the guy, and then they sneak into the Blackfoot camp in the middle of the night to get Goo's belongings back. Some of the Indians wake up and they get in a gunfight and they kill a bunch of Indians and they steal some of their horses. After that, they run into some flatheads who were been Christianized by missionaries. Jeremiah didn't know, but he gave the chief some of the scalps from the Blackfoots, because the Blackfoots were the head's enemies, and gave the chief some horses. But he didn't know that when you give a gift like that to the chief has to either give you a better gift or kill you. That was the rule. So the only thing the chief could give him that was better was his daughter. So he gave Jeremiah his daughter, that Jeremiah then married, and they became a family. He built a cabin and they lived in the cabin. And then one day the U.S. Army came to Johnson wanting to help to go take a trip to look for a lost wagon train. Talked him into doing it. He didn't want to, but they talked him into it. On the way back, noticed some blue beads on some graves on the way back, and he realized the graves were off of his wife's necklace. And he gets back to the cabin and finds his family dead. And he's angry. So he goes off after the warriors that killed his family. He kills all of them except one. He leaves one that goes and tells everybody what happened with Jeremiah Johnson and how he was taking revenge on the warriors that killed his family. Tried to kill these families, then sends their very best warriors in to kill Jeremiah for what he did to their warriors. They send them one by one, and Jeremiah kills them one by one. After that, the Crow Indians become to respect Jeremiah. He went back to where Caleb's mother lived, and she had died, but near the cabin was a monument. Crow Indians built to Jeremiah for his bravery for killing all of their warriors. They respected him, and he grew into a legend. This is the grave of James White, buffalo hunter, but he was born James Wilson in 1868, and then his wife was wooed away by a rich man, and Mr. White got so upset he shot the rich man dead and then fled. Walked 700 miles to Texas because there was a $5,000 bounty on his head. That's when he became Jim White instead of James Wilson. And he preferred to travel by wagon or wagon train, not by horse, and he hunted on foot. It was said that he killed 16,000 buffalo. Bill Cody was only said to kill a little under 5,000. So Jim White was like the biggest buffalo hunter ever. He could kill a deer from 500 yards. He was killed by unknown men, and his body was found buried under a pine tree near his cabin. His wagon, his mules, and all his equipment were gone. This grave is Jack Stillwell, known as Camanche Jack. His brother was killed by Wyatt Earp. At age 14, his parents sent him out to get water at the well. He never came back. He walked 700 miles to Kansas City instead, and he joined a wagon train headed to Santa Fe, New Mexico. He explored Indian territory with General Custer. He went out west after that to revenge the killing of his brother by Wyatt Earp, and then he ended up becoming a U.S. Marshal himself in Anadarko, Oklahoma. This is the grave of Phillip Henry Vetter, 1855 to 1892. He was found dead in his cabin by another hunter. The cabin had been torn apart and ransacked inside by a grizzly bear. A newspaper was found by his body with a story written on it in blood. It told about his epic battle with the grizzly bear, and the story ended with the words, "I'm dying." They went looking for the bear, and out in the woods they found his hat. They found 2 empty shells near his rifle, which had another shell jammed in the chamber. So apparently it started in the woods, and then the bear got him and followed him into the cabin. This whole next set of graves has an entire story that goes with it. This is about William Gallagher and his friend Blind Bill, and their relationship with Belle Drewery, the lady in blue. Blind Bill and William Gallagher. Now, William Gallagher was an outlaw, kind of an outlaw. He kept getting in trouble, but he never really went to jail. He wore a gun most of the time, had a really bad temper. Blind Bill was short, muscular, and had a patch over his left eye, and he was blind in that eye. He was a friend of Gallagher. In 1893, Gallagher had become involved with a 27-year-old Belle Drewery, one of the single women that hung around the town of Arlen early in 1894. Belle began seeing Bill Wheaton, and Gallagher became aware of the friendship, and he got into a jealous rage. On March 15th, Gallagher took Belle over to the ranch house where Wheaton was. An argument developed, and Gallagher pulled his six-shooter and held Wheaton and Belle hostage for 2 hours while he threatened them and kept cocking his gun and waving it around. And then finally he gave in and just passed the whole thing off as a joke and holstered his gun. Well, while they were being held hostage, Belle informed Mr. Wheaton about where a gun was hidden in the house. And then a little bit later, after the argument got over with, she started walking toward Matisse. When she didn't return, Gallagher went out to see where she was, and then Wheaton got the gun from his hiding place and shot Gallagher in the back. And he didn't expect it. He would the gun against the door frame and shot Gallagher in the back and shot him from behind. Wheaton then got on his horse and left. When Blind Bill learned of his friend Gallagher's death, he was upset, and he swore to everyone he was going to kill Wheaton in revenge. Wheaton was soon informed that Blind Bill was looking for him. Gallagher's loyal friend never fulfilled his vow, for he was found a few days later shot in the back by an unknown assassin. It was believed that Wheaton killed Blind Bill, but never proven. Wheaton did go to prison for the killing, though, and he spent 4 years. And the year before he got out, Belle Drewery, whose life ended in a gun-smoke-filled saloon in 1897, Belle had been killed by a vengeful cowboy after she shot and killed Jesse Conway at a saloon party. On her grave is placed a headboard with this strange epitaph, "The woman in blue with a heart so true." And the next grave we're going to be coming up on here in just a second is John Colter. He was on the Lewis and Clark expedition. He was the hunter charged with getting food for the expedition. He's mainly known for something called Colter's Hell, because when they came back from the Lewis and Clark expedition, he was telling people about the geysers and mud plots of Yellowstone. They thought he was making it all up and he was crazy, and they called it Colter's Hell. Now, I think the best story about Mr. Colter is in 1809. He was going up the Jefferson River with a Mr. Potts. They encountered several hundred Blackfoot Indians who demanded they come ashore. Colter immediately came ashore. They disarmed him and stripped him naked. Mr. Potts refused to come ashore, and the Indians shot him and wounded him. He returned fire and killed one of the Indians, but then the Indians riddled Mr. Potts' body with bullets, drug him ashore, and they hacked him to pieces. Then they turned to Mr. Colter and they told him to run. So he ran. And as he looked behind him, he saw a whole pack of young Indians, prospective braves, coming after him. He ran several miles, still naked and exhausted, bleeding from the nose, had blood all over his face, but he was far ahead of the group except for one young brave that stayed right on his tail. He couldn't get away from the one brave, and he realized he was getting tired. He was going to have to stop. So as he turned his head, he saw the savage not 20 yards from him. Determined to avoid the expected death blow, he suddenly stopped, turned around, spread his arms. The Indian was just in mid-throw with his spear. It surprised him, and he stumbled and fell. The spear stuck into the ground right beside Colter. He pulled the spear out of the ground, ran toward the Indian, and pinned him to the ground with the spear and killed him. He then took the blanket, wrapped himself, and kept running because the rest of the Braves were catching up to him now. They were still after him. He got just out of sight and came across a beaver dam. He swum out in the water and hid inside of the beaver's home. The sticks, the mound of sticks out in the middle. He climbed inside of that beaver home and hid and stayed there till nighttime. And then in the middle of the night, he came out of the beaver home and he walked 11 days. He walked for 11 days to the Trader's Fort on the Little Bighorn. That was some story. And the rest of these plaques are not really graves, but tributes to mountain men that was in the area. Jedediah Strong Smith was known for maps with the Lewis and Clark's expedition. And then there's George Droullard, who was the interpreter that could interpret Shoshone Indian language for Lewis and Clark. And then last there's James Old Gabe Bridger, and he's mainly known for discovering Bridger Pass, which cut 61 miles off of the Oregon Trail. Saved people a lot of time. And then out in the field out here, off of the property, is the grave of William Garlow Cody, who is the grandson of Buffalo Bill Cody. And that's it for the graveyard. And look for the next part 3, which is the northern half of the town with all the cabins and saloons and bars and things.